Good afternoon, everyone. Can you get a seat? Thanks for coming. My name is Mary Lauder. I'm a Project Green volunteer. This room is full of Project Green volunteers, and thanks to all of you. We do this every winter. We put on at least three garden forums for the anybody to come, and it's always free, and we always have door prizes, and we always have refreshments. So I hope that'll get you coming for the next two times. We have one the second Sunday in February and one the second Sunday in March. And if you don't know what they are, there's a list of the topics back on the desk. I hope you all signed up for door prizes as you came in the door. We have some really nice ones, and we'll be giving them out as after the talk, during the break, and also during the question and answer period. I wanted to mention that we have some envelopes if you'd care to stick some money in them to donate to Project Green, and those are on the back table as well. Many thanks to the Iowa City Library for letting us do this, and particularly to Beth Fisher, who is in that room over there controlling everything. This talk today will be recorded and will be available for checkout from library patrons, and it will also be shown on the local cable channel, local city channel. What do you call it?
The library has their own channel.
The library's channel on the cable at MediaCom. So the agenda today is, I'll stop talking very soon. I'll let Jen take over and present her talk. Then when she's done, we're going to break for a bit to eat. There's lots of good cookies and coffee and so forth back there. And during that time, take these white pieces of paper that you see sitting around on the chairs, write questions and bring them up here to the podium. And then we'll reconvene, and I will read those questions and Jen will answer them, we hope. Okay, so it's a two-part deal here. We have a talk and then we bug her for information. So I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Jennifer Jordan is the Iowa City's recycling coordinator. She's been in this job for 7.5 years. Jen graduated with a bachelor's degree from Iowa in geography and a master's degree in urban planning. She worked at Grinnell College for 1 year as their environmental and safety coordinator, and then took the job. She was with Iowa City, and she is Iowa City's first recycling coordinator. For fun, Jen likes to garden. She's a big vegetable gardener, doesn't do any flowers, so sad. And she enjoys making food for her family, which consists of 2 kids, 2 dogs, 3 ferrets, and of course her wife. We really appreciate Jen coming to talk to us today. Any of you who have heard her speak know how passionately she cares about her job. And every time I've heard her speak, I just feel so proud to live here. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, well, thank you very much for having me today. I have to say, first of all, I plant vegetables and not flowers because I can eat vegetables. So it's not a particular bias against flowers. I could probably look into edible flowers, and I'd enjoy planting those as well. But the main concern for me is if I can eat it or not. All right. Let's get started here. So I'm going to, please do feel free to ask lots of questions. I'm going to cover some pretty specific areas, and I'll keep those up for just a second here. So this is the overview of what I'm going to talk about today. If there are other things that you have questions about as far as city services or landfill services that aren't included, I'd be happy to answer questions or do my very best to do so. I do have contact information from a couple of other city staff people included in the presentation, and I have a couple cards over there as well. So I may not know the answer, but if I don't, I can get you pointed in the right direction and probably get you to the right person. So these are the things I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about our compost that we make at the Iowa City Landfill and the wood chips, our household hazardous waste program, and our swap shop at the Iowa City Landfill, our compost bin and rain barrel sales, which have changed a little bit over the last year, and I would love input on that if anyone has participated in either of the 2 of those types of sales that we've done. I'll talk about our stormwater management program, I keep saying brand new, but it's almost 2 years old now, so I have to stop saying that, our Eastside Recycling Center, and the services and opportunities that we have there, as well as our great partnerships that we have. All right, so starting out with one of my favorite topics, compost. We make a lot of compost at the Iowa City Landfill, and if you saw the compost sample over here, I have to say, I didn't bring a very good sample, so this is actually not representative of what the compost that we do make at the Iowa City Landfill. This sample's about 2 years old, and it's really dried out, and I shared it with someone from Johnson County to do for a presentation for her, for Amy Bauska. So Amy has the better half of my sample, I think. I need to get a new one, so do feel free to look at it, but don't judge our compost on that, please. Well, every year the Iowa City Landfill takes in yard waste, and I should add, the Iowa City Landfill serves all of Johnson County as well as the cities of Kelowna and Riverside. So it's not just the city of Iowa City, it's the greater metropolitan area. So it's about 125,000 people that we serve. We take in yard waste and leaves from across Johnson County, and it's about 7,500 tons per year of material. I mean, the last few years, and actually I say few, but in 2007 we started a pilot program with the University of Iowa to start taking in food waste, and that pilot project has gone from the first year we took in about 30 tons to just over 500 tons last year. And if you shop at either Hy-Vee or New Pioneer Co-op, if you eat at the Bluebird Diner, if you have a kid or someone you know goes to Regina Catholic schools, all of those locations are currently locations that are collecting food waste for composting and getting it to the Iowa City Landfill for composting. So it's a really neat program. In addition to adding really great nutrients to our compost facility and to our program there, it actually can potentially save those businesses money because it's less for them to bring us organics than it is for them to bring it to us as trash. So you can see the photo here. It's kind of gross, but it's really representative of the type of stuff that we get. And this is actually, this is material that's been pulped from the University of Iowa. So in addition to those places that I mentioned, the University of Iowa Hillcrest and Burge Halls are also bringing us their compost, or excuse me, their organics for composting, as well as just this past year, the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. So we get a lot of material from a lot of what I would consider the bigger producers of organic waste in town. That's great. It's always important to think about keeping that stuff out of the landfill, but we're hoping that they're also starting to think about looking further upstream and not producing that food waste in the first place. So that's part of the outreach efforts that we work on. So with the compost or the organic material that we take in, we are able to make about 1,900 tons of compost per year. And I have some stats here. I don't know quite how well you'll be able to see them. Hopefully you will. I have the last few fiscal years here, last 7 or 8 fiscal years, and I'll just point out a couple of really interesting things, and I should have done another highlight. If you look at FY09, the incoming organics, FY09 would have been June 1st, 2008 to July 1st, 2008 to June 30th, right, 2009. Within that was the storms and the flood of 2008. So we got a lot of material in. You can see the big spike that we took in that year from material coming in. So it really does, the amount of material coming in really does depend on the local environment and what's happening. You can see we were down this past year, and I don't know if that has something to do with the weather that we've had the past couple years, the drought, just not having a lot of material come in. But I'll also point out the one I put in red there. We only sold 1,000 tons of compost this past year, just over that. This is the first year that we haven't run out of compost in I think 3 or 4 years. So if you're looking for compost, we do have some available. We've had actually a pretty consistent supply since July of this past year. We did run out for a few weeks in July, and we had some ready again almost immediately, I think in August. So we do have compost available, which is really exciting because I know it's January, but it's 40 degrees out today. And if anyone else was having the same thoughts, like, oh, maybe I should go play in the garden today, we do have compost available. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that we use to make our compost. And if any of you compost at home, which I'm assuming probably the majority of people in this room do, or at least know very much about it, it's very similar. The process that we use at the landfill is about as basic as you can get. The main difference between our process and the backyard compost is the scale. And I've used this picture probably in about 20 different presentations because I think it's really neat to show the size and the scope of our compost facility. If you can see in the middle of the photo, right where there's the transition between the dark and the grass there, that's a truck in the background. So to give you a size or a scale of the idea of how much compost we produce in a given year, it's pretty amazing. Trying to imagine 7,500 tons of material coming in is a little bit difficult, but we have at any given time, we have 8 or 10 of these windrows, which are about 150 feet long, 15 feet wide or so, and 10 to 12 feet tall. So it's a huge operation, but it really is just as simple as you do it in your own backyard. It's open air windrows. We grind up the material as it comes in, and that grinds up and mixes the food waste, the leaves that we pick up throughout the city of Iowa City in the fall. We actually stockpile those and add those back into the program throughout the rest of the year so we have the right C to N ratio. So we add that back in with the food waste, with the other materials that right now we're getting the holiday Christmas trees in, of course, and all kinds of good smelling stuff. This is a really good time of year to be at the landfill because it smells amazing when they're grinding up those Douglas firs. It smells awesome. We take the temperatures twice a week as we have to do by law, and this is one of my favorite things. I'm sorry I couldn't bring a giant pile of compost to you to actually stick this temperature probe in, but this is the type of temperature probe that we use to measure the temperatures at the Iowa City Landfill. And my favorite thing about doing tours, especially for little kids, is when you put this, especially when it's colder out like it is now, when you put this temperature probe in a compost pile and it's 30 or even 50 degrees outside, the temperature on the probe shoots up to anywhere from 140 to 150 degrees. So you can just see the little kids' eyes light up and they're immediately fascinated. And I usually use the analogy of baking with compost, that we cook the compost, that it's cooking itself. So the bugs are doing what they do and they produce carbon dioxide and water vapor, and it cooks down over the course of about 6 months, and then it's done and we can sell it. So that's the analogy that I use for little kids, but I think it actually works really well overall. We do test the moisture and the oxygen once a month as well to make sure we're meeting our permit requirements through the Department of Natural Resources. We turn the compost monthly, and again, this is just, I don't turn my compost at home monthly. Does anybody in here turn their compost monthly? No. We have to by law, otherwise we probably wouldn't either. But the system that we use is about as simple as we can get. We actually use just an end loader, and we pick it up from one windrow and dump it into the next, and we keep moving it over. So by the time it gets to the far end, then it's essentially done cooking. We can measure that with what's called a Solvita test, and I brought just the basic test. We do is, it's really, again, really simple. We get a compost sample, we put it in here. There's, I lost my paddles. There's a couple of little plastic paddles that go in here. We put this back on and let it essentially off gas, and then based on how the paddles change color, and I have a kind of a description over here if anyone wants to look at it. Depending on how the paddles change color, it measures the carbon dioxide and the ammonia to test the doneness, and when they reach a certain level, then we know it's done and we can screen it. So we have a screener. We do then screen the compost, which gets out the bigger chunks and any other, there is sometimes contamination in the compost, so it gets some of that material out or most of that material out. Once it's screened, then it has to sit for 30 days to cure, to cool back down, so we're not sending out compost that's 130, 140 degrees to your plants, because that would be very bad. And then once it's cured for those 30 days and cooled back down, we can actually sell it. And we, as I mentioned earlier, we have sold out consistently for the past 3 or 4 years, and this year we didn't. Part of that, I think, is that we started limiting commercial haulers to essentially half of what was available at any given time. We've gotten a lot of feedback over, yes, exactly. I know it's very frustrating as a resident to go out and not be able to get compost. We had a lot of feedback from residents of Iowa City and Johnson County that they were frustrated that they've been waiting all year for compost, and they see these trucks take 10 or 15 tons at a time, and then they can't get 200 or 300 pounds to top dress their yard or their garden. So we started limiting the commercial haulers. We also doubled the price from $10 a ton to $20 a ton, which personally, as a user and as a city employee, I think is still a really good deal. A ton of compost is pretty usually around a pickup load full, so you're still paying $20 for a pickup load of compost. And again, this isn't a great sample that I have here, but if you haven't used or seen our compost, I would encourage you to check it out. It's actually really, really good stuff. I'm very proud of it. And we put a lot of effort into it, as you can see. So check it out if you haven't. All right, I think I'm going to skip this slide because I'm hoping that you guys all know what compost does and the goodness of it as master gardeners and Project Green folks, and skip to quality, because we've had a lot of conversations over the past couple of years about what quality compost is. And I can say we have quality compost, and someone else might say, yeah, but what does that mean? Or what does that mean to you? What does the landfill consider quality compost? So our main thing is really making sure that it's fully cooked, that we're not sending hot compost back out into the community, that it's screened, that there's not a lot of contaminants in it. One of the issues that we've had in previous years, and if any of you live in Iowa City and have curbside service, you may remember the green bags that we used to use, the green biodegradable plastic bags. Those were biodegradable plastic, but they were not compostable plastic. So if you purchase compost anytime over the last decade, you've hopefully seen a significant improvement in it as we've gotten those bags out of the program. Though I still think there must be people who just had cases of those bags in their garage, because we still get bags and we haven't sold them since 2008. So there is a lot less contamination in it than there used to be, but it's still, you can still occasionally see a green bag in it. So it's always kind of interesting to, in my head, I'm wondering who hoarded those bags and how are they still held to, how are they still whole? I'm not sure. But we really do try and have a quality compost that doesn't have weed seeds in it. The temperatures, and we measure these again twice a week, we measure the temperatures. So we know that the temperatures are getting up to at least 132 degrees for 2 weeks straight within the process. So we know that we're killing any weed seeds in there. Now that's not to say that we're not getting weed seeds blown in on occasion. So if you've had compost either from us or from someone else that has grown weed seeds or grown weeds, it's possible that the seeds have blown in and not gone through the entire process and stayed viable. High in organic matter, that's very important to us, and the food waste that we've started taking in has started increasing that organic matter, the nitrogen in particular, and we also want to make sure that the compost is low in soluble salts. So how we accomplish some of those things are our required annual compost analysis report. And I have a copy of our most recent one over here. This is it too, but it's obviously really hard to read. This is one of 4 pages. The DNR requires that we test for a handful of things. The basic compost test that we do yields 4 pages of results. And I try not to geek out on it too much, but if anyone's interested, there's a paper copy here, and I can send you it via email as well if you prefer that way. But you can see the types of things that we test for. We test for the PNK, of course, magnesium, calcium, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, copper. Again, this is just the first page. I'm going to do kind of a summary here. The items in red are the ones that DNR requires that we test for. So essentially the heavy metals in the fecal coliform. So we can tell people safely that we are well under the dry-based results, what they must be under in order to send it back out into the community. So I'll just look at those for just a minute. And again, I have a paper copy of our last test over here, and I can send it via email as well. This is actually a compilation of the test from 2004 to 2013. So again, we take an annual test every July, which probably, I haven't really thought about that before. I should think about how that affects our moisture content, but probably not a whole lot because we dig into the pile to get the actual test or the actual sample. So it probably doesn't affect it a whole lot even in a dry year like last year. Okay, the important thing now, where to get compost. So I mentioned that we do sell compost at the Iowa City Landfill and Recycling Center. It's $20 a ton, and we do it 2 ways. If people are interested in small quantities, and honestly, I tend to use my curbside recycling bin. When it's full, I figure it's about 50 pounds, and it fits in my car, and I obviously can make multiple trips because I'm going there almost every day anyway. But that's about 50 pounds, so that would be the minimum, which would be the $2. But you can also, if you're looking for larger quantities, we can load it for you. If you have a pickup truck or a friend with a truck and trailer, or if you're looking for 9 tons at a time, like Mary did with it last year or 2 years ago. This summer. Okay, so this summer. You can hire private haulers who will haul you lots and lots of compost. And I have found that, and I haven't hauled large quantities like that myself, but from what I understand, it's actually usually more expensive to hire someone to haul it than it is the cost of the compost. Do you mind if I ask, was that your experience too?
The compost was actually more expensive.
The compost was more?
$150 for the compost and $100 for the hauling.
Okay, so $150 for the compost for a 9-ton load and $100 for the hauling. So that gives you an idea. So for $250, you can get a really good load of compost. But again, the city doesn't provide the service of the hauling. So you can do it in small quantities yourself, and you have to load that yourself and provide your own containers. You can hire someone to do it, or you can finagle a friend into hauling it for you. If you are looking for small quantities, we do have small quantities available at the Eastside Recycling Center too. We have a roll-off container there, and we really try and limit that to small quantities such as 5-gallon buckets or recycling bins or Rubbermaid tubs like that size. If you want much more than that, we encourage you to go to the landfill because otherwise we're just running constantly to refresh that small supply. So in either case, it's $20. Well, it's $20 a ton. There's a $2 minimum at the landfill, and we ask for 50 cents or so for a 5-gallon bucket at the Eastside Recycling Center, which I guess I didn't mention, is at on 2401 Scott Boulevard Southeast, and we just have a drop box for money there. So we're encouraging people to appreciate the compost and pay what you will for it, basically there. And I have, of course, Kinnick up here showing that this is one of the many examples around the community of locations that have used our compost. I think I took that in about 2008 or 2009. Okay, so wood chips. We also take in a lot of wood waste at the Iowa City Landfill, and this was not included, the numbers were not included on that initial graph that I showed with the amount of material that we get in at the landfill. We get in a pretty insignificant amount of wood chips compared to compost. The issue is that the wood chips, when you grind them up, they don't shrink down like the compost does. So we get a lot more of the organic material in that we make the compost out of, but we get a lot less out of the final product. With the wood chips, we pretty much get it in, grind it up, and sell it right away, and it doesn't shrink down at all, like I mentioned. So again, it's small quantities or bulk loads at the Iowa City Landfill. At the Eastside Recycling Center, again, it's scoop your own, so same as the compost. The wood chips are actually $10 a ton, and those went from, as of July this year, when the compost went from $10 to $20 a ton, the wood chips went from free to $10 a ton. And that was just to start to cover the cost of the equipment and the staff that it takes to grind the materials. And if you haven't used our wood chips, I didn't bring a sample of those. Frankly, they're not super high quality. We do double grind them, but this gives you that's not a great photo close-up, but there's a close-up. It's really more like a shredded material. I've used them between garden rows and it works pretty effectively. I've also put them between beds, but I have found that it works better to put either some sort of landscaping cloth down between the beds before I put the wood chips down, or even cardboard to help get another year's worth out of them. I would say if you don't put a barrier down, you're probably gonna start seeing stuff shoot up probably the next season, if not by the end. If you do it in the spring, you might even see by the end of that season. So they're pretty coarse. They're certainly not something one can walk on barefoot. So they're not playground. I've had that question. Are they playground quality? Definitely not. Unless you have like rocks for feet. I'm not sure how you, yeah. It would take a lot to be able to walk on these barefoot. Very stern continence. Okay, so I'm gonna take a drink here and move on to hazardous waste. Okay, so if any of you have been to the Iowa City Landfill before, it's probably or possibly because of our hazardous waste facility there. We take hazardous waste from households and small businesses in Johnson County. We've done that for just over a decade now, and there's no cost for residents to use the program, but there is a fee for small businesses, and we're limited in the size of businesses that we can help through the EPA. So if someone like the university called and said, we have 6 tons of this chemical to get rid of from a lab, we can't help you with it. We could not help the university in that case, or other businesses with that large a quantity. But if someone like, if a small business called and said, I'm doing a clean out, I found a mercury thermometer and 6 light bulbs and this and this and this. If it's a small quantity, we can take that material from the businesses. In either case, residents or businesses do have to make an appointment. And we can take materials. I guess I haven't really explained what hazardous waste is. So hazardous waste is basically anything you don't want kids, pets, or grandkids getting into. So chemicals, compact fluorescent bulbs, pharmaceuticals, we get lots of stuff. And I had a few examples up here. So also paint, oil, that type of stuff. We actually have oil recycling facilities at the landfill and at the Eastside Recycling Center, in which you don't need an appointment for those. So that's actually not a great example, sorry. But we can take pretty much anything else that is hazardous. So again, paint, cleaners, we get fingernail polish remover, anything like that that you wouldn't want to put down the drain. We can take that material. And again, there's no cost, but you do have to call to make an appointment. We also, as someone pointed out that's used the service, we have a quarterly mobile collection at the Eastside Recycling Center, and we just had one December 1st. Our next one would be March 1st, and then every third month after that on the first Saturday of the month. Because those are mobile collections and we have relatively limited space in our trailer though, we do limit to 1 box per household for those mobile events and no latex paint. Latex paint is one of the things at the landfill that we just really get frustrated with, because it's not hazardous, but people of course want to do the right thing and they don't want to dump it down the drain or just throw it away. So what we encourage people to do, because it is water-based, is to use something like this commercial hardener, which I have samples you're welcome to take. You can use a commercial hardener to harden up the latex paint and then toss it with your regular trash. Again, it's not hazardous, it's water-based. It just can't go into your trash as a liquid. So besides this, which you can, again, take a sample or purchase around here commercially, I think Menards has it, or probably Ace Hardware too. But you can also use something like kitty litter or shredded newspaper, or if you're looking for something to do on a Saturday afternoon, it's really cruddy weather out, you can just take the lids off and let it dry out. Just do it in a well-ventilated area. But again, as long as it's not a liquid, you can put latex paint in with your regular trash. Not a liquid, basically, if you think about the consistency of cottage cheese, where it's chunky and there's not any free-flowing liquids, then that can go in the trash. So again, please feel free to take one of those or a couple of them if you have a lot. And I think this does about 2/3 of a can. Okay, so I've already covered business hazardous waste. We also have a swap shop at the Iowa City Landfill, and I bring this up in particular because especially this time of year, and this is a little bit ironic, I'll get to that in a minute. This time of year, we get a lot of materials in as people are cleaning out their, or in the fall or in the spring when people have cleaned out their garages, they have a half a bottle of this and a third a bottle of that, and they just want to clear it out. a lot of times we get gardening supplies in, and if the bottles are in decent condition, if they're generally at least half full and the bottles are clean and not broken or not leaking, we'll actually put those into the swap shop, and people can come take those materials for use at their own homes anytime, and there's no cost for that. So the reason I said it was ironic, I actually stopped out to the landfill this morning to see what was all out there, because I was going to try and bring a supply, and someone has obviously been thinking about this and getting ready for spring, because we had one product in the swap shop that pertained to gardening. So wasn't able to bring a supply as I planned, but I did bring a few examples of the type of stuff we get in. So there are some examples over there. We literally get everything from mothballs to fertilizers to bug repellents. So there's and the whole gauntlet in between. So if you're looking for stuff at no cost for gardening supplies, or we often get paint in there, cleaning supplies as well. In particular for this group, though, I thought we would be interested because we do get a lot of gardening supplies in. And again, there's no cost for those. They're as available, so I wouldn't necessarily encourage you to make specific trips out just to see, but if you're going there anyway, check it out. And we're open 7 to 4:30 Monday through Saturday. Or if you have a key like I do, you can go in on Sundays to check for things. But okay. Okay, something that we hear from residents a lot is that they want to start composting or they want to start collecting water for their garden, and that is wonderful. I was just telling somebody earlier, I forget who now, I have 2 compost bins at home and I have several rain barrels, and the city has held multiple events over the past, I think, 5 years. I think our first event was either 2008 or 2009. And we've sold a lot of compost bins and a lot of rain barrels, which is great, to encourage people to start thinking about these things in their own home and using them in their own yards. Especially last year when I had my 3 rain barrels, probably I think I had to run water maybe twice to water my tomatoes and other plants. So they do collect a lot of water really quickly, but then you can kind of spread that out over the year to use. So the compost bin and rain barrel sales that we've done over the past few years have changed a little bit. In the past, we've done large bulk sales. So we'll work with the contractor to come in and do a truckload sale. Did anybody try and buy a bin 2 summers ago at the Eastside Recycling Center? That was me apologizing to everyone that morning when the truck did not show up. And it was an awful day, but I left smiling, and I think I only got yelled at by 2 people. And one of them had driven from Solon, so I completely understand. Last year, not because of that, but last year we got some input that the local businesses would like to be involved in the program that we were doing. So we worked with probably 8 or 10 different local hardware stores to do sales through the hardware sales instead of the city doing a bulk sale. So if anybody's participated in that, I would love feedback on that later. So again, we've done it 2 different ways. We've done the bulk sale where people can come, stand in line, get their bin at a really great price, or the way we did it last year, actually, and I didn't mention, the city of Iowa City and the city of Coralville gave out $20 coupons. So you could have a $20 coupon for a rain barrel and a $20 coupon for a compost bin, and then you could take it to one of these participating retailers, pick out the one that you wanted, and get that $20 discount. So we've done it a couple different ways. We didn't sell as many last year, but it was the first time we had done that way with the coupons through the local retailer. So again, if anybody has feedback on that, I'd love to hear it later, because it's time to start planning whichever way we're going to do it. It's time to be thinking about it now, because I'd like to do a sale again either way in April of this year. Okay, stormwater management, and this is not my area of expertise, so I threw a lot of information up here, which looks great, right? But I do have some information over here about the city's Stormwater Best Management Practices program, and I'll talk more specifically about some instances that we've used stormwater management, and specifically at the Eastside Recycling Center. There's a ton of information up here. What I want to highlight is that if you live in Iowa City, or in Coralville actually, or I think North Liberty now too, you pay on your excuse me, on your monthly utility bill, you pay a stormwater utility fee. And I'll speak specifically to Iowa City. In the case of Iowa City, that goes into a fund for which residents and businesses can apply for funding back to do things like rain barrels or creek management programs or rain gardens or pervious paving, anything like that. So I do have information about that program over here. Again, I don't know a whole lot about it other than that, but I know that the city has money available starting July 1st for these programs. And I know the city of Coralville and the city of North Liberty have very similar programs. Okay, so that's an instance of a rain garden that someone had built using stormwater management funds. And the person, if you do have specific questions, the person to talk to about that is Carol Sweeting, and her contact information is here. Carol also organizes volunteer activities throughout the city, and these, I'm grinning because these are really cool programs. I should have put some pictures up. If any of you are on Facebook, you should like Carol's program, which is the City of Iowa City Stormwater Volunteer Opportunities. She has photos of University of Iowa and Kirkwood students doing creek and river cleanups, and it's phenomenal. They, in the fall and in the spring, they do, I think, 4 cleanups in each season, and they also, and Carol's also organized an Iowa River cleanup each year or each summer for the last few years. And the kids, I grew up on a farm, so I'm certainly not squeamish. I have no problems walking into a creek and picking stuff out. But some of these kids show up, and you think, now how's that going to work out? And they come out covered in mud and grinning from ear to ear because they've helped clean up the creek. So it's a really cool opportunity to get local students involved. And Carol accepts volunteers from non-students as well. So if you're interested in volunteering, it's a really neat program. I encourage you to check it out. And Carol's great to work with. Okay, so moving on to the Eastside Recycling Center. I'm going to cover, of the 6 topics I have here, I'm going to focus on the stormwater and the education and partnerships. That being said, if you have an opportunity to head out to the Eastside Recycling Center, there are lots of really cool things going on out there. I'm really fortunate to work at the landfill 3 days a week and at the Eastside Recycling Center 2 days a week. So I really get to see kind of the best and worst case scenarios of city facilities. And not that the landfill is a bad city facility, it's kind of the bottom of the barrel as far as resources. So, and materials coming in. It's really, it's great to spend time out there and see all of the opportunities that we have as residents to do better, and then to go to the Eastside Recycling Center and see all the amazing things that we've done. Okay, so stormwater, and again, this isn't my area of expertise. It certainly is Carol's, and then Brenda Nations, the city's environmental coordinator, environmental coordinator, that's right. So if you have specific questions specifically about the plants, which is not, again, I can't eat the plants here, so I don't know a whole lot about them. But if you have more specific questions than what I cover here, please feel free to ask and I can get you in contact. I also have Brenda's cards over here and more information. So how many, just a quick show of hands, how many of you have been to the Eastside Recycling Center? Oh, wow, okay, I'm preaching to the choir, this is great. So you've probably seen and hopefully been there at the right time of year to see the biocells in full bloom. It's pretty astounding what Brenda in particular has done out there. This is looking from the west east at the Eastside Recycling Center, at the Education Center itself. And as I was looking for photos to put this presentation together, I realized I only have really dull photos. I do have a few more green ones later on, but this is actually, I believe, it must have been the first season because those plants are pretty small compared to what they've been over the last couple years. But these are some of the things that we have going on at the Eastside Recycling Center as far as stormwater management. We have a 3rd acre of biocells. Which used Iowa City community compost to refill those basins. We have a green roof. We have 2 living walls that have really improved under the really good hand of our Bryce Marin. If any of you have been out there and seen Bryce working, he does a phenomenal job. We have a couple of rain gardens. We have some permeable paving, and then we have pervious concrete. So we tried to really put in some examples of what residents can do. You might not choose to do all of these things, but hopefully you can go out there and look and see, oh, this is great, I'm going to do a little bit of this and a little bit of this. So we really tried to give kind of a good example of multiple different things. So these are some of the pavers that we have in front of the Education Center. And you wouldn't necessarily know that those are environmentally friendly, but instead of using mortar between the blocks, they're actually just small rocks so the water can infiltrate down between them or among them. This is one of the rain gardens, and we have 2. There's another one actually just to the side of this. If you've been out there prior to the last year, you might have thought, well, I wonder how well those work because they were mounded up. When we put them in, they didn't get put in as they should have. We have since, in working with the Urban and Regional Planning Student Association and lots of strong backs, young students, they've actually, they took out all the plants, they took that mound and made it into a basin and replanted everything this past summer. So instead of the water running in, running around that basin and running back out, now it's going to run in and sit there and infiltrate like it's supposed to. So Bryce was really instrumental in making that happen too. This is the green roof, and this was, you can see the date stamp there. It was October 25th of 2011. So this is an older photo, but it's one of my favorites because I think it really shows the beauty that is the green roof there. This is one of the 2 living walls, and again, this is October 25th of 2011. These all got replanted last summer, so if you've been out there a couple different times, you've probably seen a difference in how much they've grown, and eventually all of that concrete should be covered by the cascading of the plants. This is a little bit better shot. This was taken in October of 2011, so you can see time of year. These were planted in the summer of 2010. I believe so. So you can see they're starting to come on. You can see lots of little white cups. Anybody want to guess what those are for? Rabbits. We have created a great rabbit habitat at the Eastside Recycling Center, and we've really struggled over the past couple of years, especially of getting the plant started. But there's most of them now, and if you've been out recently, you've seen how much different it looks. But initially, Brenda and Bryce had a really hard time getting some of these plants started because the rabbits loved them. This is another shot. You can see this is actually pooling water running off the parking lot. So this is exactly what this is intended to do. The intent of the biocells is to infiltrate that water on site rather than just running off into the creek. And the creek is actually, it runs along here where the green space is. So we really want to try and capture that water and infiltrate it on site. And we've had a couple gully washers this past summer where a lot of the mulch was washed out. But as the plants are starting to grow and really take good root, that's actually been reduced quite a bit. So there's still, it's like, was it last summer? We got 4 rainstorms and they were all like 3 inches each. Those are not good for this because it really does wash the mulch. But as I mentioned, they've really started, as the plants have started taking root, it's really started to hold things in place. There's my coworker Brenda that I've mentioned a couple times, fastidiously planting her plants. And this is a little bit better shot, and I don't have a date stamp on this one, but I think this one was last summer. So you can start to see the plants are much happier out there. And I should mention, in the 3rd acre of the biocell, there are over 60 species, and there were over 2,000 individual plugs planted in clusters of 3. So there was a lot of planning that went into this, a lot of labor, and a lot of volunteers and a lot of intern labor as well. And the design of the biocells was designed by Liz Moss with Transition Ecology, and she did a really good job. She planned it out so that there should be something blooming from, I believe, April until October every year, and it's just really beautiful. And I think she color coordinated stuff pretty well too. But again, I can't eat it, so I don't pay that much attention to it. Okay, there's Brenda's contact information if you have specific questions. She's done a really good job, and I had this in one of the earlier slides, but I don't have any photos of it. She and Bryce have done a really good job of signing the plants. So she got little stakes with the plant names on them, and they're really nice. So all the plants around the perimeter of the biocells, or at least the 2 bigger biocells, have plant descriptions. I think they have the Latin and the regular names. So you can see, if you can go out and see something that you like, you can know exactly what it is just by looking at it, which is very helpful for non-plant people like me. This is something that I just added yesterday as I was finishing up this presentation. The creek along the perimeter of the Eastside Recycling Center runs around basically the west side and then around the southwest and south side. The creek bank itself is pretty cruddy. The first couple years we really just focused on getting the poison ivy out, and now we're trying to get more stuff that we want to grow there. Part of that has been stormwater management. It flashes really, really badly because of all the, if you can picture where the Eastside Recycling Center is, it's on the southeast side of town. There's a lot of industrial and commercial facilities out there with a lot of non-porous paving, with a lot of roofs, and with not much green space to soak into. So when we get a 2-inch rain or even a 1/2-inch rain, that water all runs off into the creek and flashes really high. It's not unusual to see the water flash from just the absolute minimal level to at the creek bank within a couple of hours if we get a really big storm. And if you live near a creek in Iowa City, you've probably seen this as well. So the stormwater management practices that I've been talking about are to try and help avoid some of that and to get the water to infiltrate on site instead of just running, flashing, flooding people's homes and then running off down the creek where we can't use it anymore. So we really do want to try and get the water to infiltrate as much as we can. Part of that is improving the creek bank itself. And these are gabion baskets, which has become one of my favorite words this year. Gabion baskets, I love it. Also a lot of backbreaking labor, I've been told. I haven't had the task to participate in helping with this, which I'm very thankful for. But this is to Bryce, whose back is to us, and then one of Brenda's interns this summer. They have put in, I think, close to 24 of these baskets. And there's also some along the creek bank if you use the trail. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the trail, but there's a trail in Iowa City that also has some along the creek to maintain that creek bank. But they basically bury the wire baskets, fill it with rocks, and then stuff ends up growing over, and you can see they backfilled here. But that should help that bank, keep that bank from eroding. And then when we do more plantings and things there, it will help improve the overall quality of it. And this is Brenda, Nations Environmental Coordinator that I mentioned. And her pet project this past year was putting up a purple martin house. And I got to say, she really geeked out about it, and it was really fun to watch her. There's a purple martin house at the wastewater treatment plant south of town. So she thought, well, if we put one here, it might be a nice waste station for them. And indeed, we had, I think of those 12, what we were calling apartments, I think we had purple martins in 4 of them this past year. So it was lots of fun. She took every opportunity she could to crank the house down and show everybody that was around the babies and the purple martins, and then she'd crank it back up, and it was really neat. So I've learned from her that it's kind of a cult thing, purple martins are. So, okay, yep. From the laughter, I gather she's right. It's really neat, though, to learn about that from her, because she gets really excited about it. Okay, so moving on to more general Eastside Recycling Center stuff. This is more of the stuff that I do. The recycling portion of it. We have a 24-hour drop-off recycling site at the Eastside Recycling Center, at which we can take cardboard, all kinds of paper, including phone books and magazines and newspaper and mixed office paper, chipboard, so things like cracker boxes and cereal boxes. We can take plastics numbers 1 through 5 and 7, which the exception is number 6, as you see. That's basically styrofoam, and we don't have a program for that yet. But City Carton has recently received some funding from the state to work on a program for styrofoam. So I will be keeping a very close eye on that. It's very exciting. I get this question all the time. What about styrofoam? Well, the basic answer is try not to use it. But if you do, we're working on getting a program for that. We work very closely with City Carton to find homes for materials. And everything that the city picks up at the curb and at our drop-off sites, actually, we have a contract with City Carton for. So if there's a material such as styrofoam that they can't take, then the city doesn't have a place for it either. So we really work very closely with them to try and find markets for those materials and to try and first of all, again, encourage people not to use some of those materials if we don't have a market for it. We also take glass at the Eastside Recycling Center, cartons, books, plastic bags, and metal. So this is just a side shot of the recycling bins out there. If you do recycle there and you've seen some changes lately, we did move some of the bins around to make way for snow removal. So some of those bins have moved. They are still there. They're just over on the east side. So check it out when you're there. We have a 24-hour oil and oil filter drop-off site at the Eastside Recycling Center. If you use this facility, it's just basically a garage with an overhead door. The overhead door is closed often, but the pedestrian door is never locked. So if you come out there with your oil or your oil filters, don't leave them outside even if that overhead door is closed. Just use the pedestrian door and set them on the shelves in there. And you do have to bring your oil in a container that you're willing to leave, because we don't have people there all the time to dump your containers to give them back to you. So bring it in a container. A milk carton works well, or the original oil container. You can just put it right back in that and just leave it on the shelf. As I mentioned earlier, you can purchase wood chips and compost at the Eastside Recycling Center. I talked a little bit about that quarterly hazardous waste events, and again, that's we do those. The next one will be March, the first Saturday in March, whatever that is. They're from 8 to 11 in the morning, and information's all on our website. It's limited to 1 box per household and no latex paint. And then over the past 3 years, we've started working with the DEA to do pharmaceutical collection events as well. And we can take some pharmaceuticals throughout the year at the Iowa City Landfill through a hazardous waste facility, but we can't take controlled substances, so things like codeine or anything with the higher pain type stuff. But we can take those types of materials and pretty much anything else at our pharmaceutical disposal events, because we are very fortunate to work with the Iowa City Police Department to have an officer there to take custody of things. Those are actually really fun events, at least for the staff and the volunteers, because we don't often get to hang out with the police department, and Jory Bailey is my buddy now, so he's lots of fun. But they're 4-hour events. They're generally held, and they're set up by the DEA, the dates are. They're generally held in April and October, so we will have one coming up this spring, and we'll advertise that as soon as we have dates from the DEA. We also, the past couple of years, have had those at the Senior Center as well, and we started reaching out to some of the local pharmacies to have events the week before the main event, so we'll be advertising all of that, and that information's on our website. Okay, so education at Eastside. These are a couple photos that have made me happy over the past few days. I had a Girl Scout group just yesterday morning, a Daisy troop at the Eastside Recycling Center, and we were talking about natural resources. So their leader, Sarah, is there reading a story about natural resources, and they talked about stormwater, and they talked about local food, and they talked about recycling. Then we did a tour of the facility, and then we talked about something that people might have a problem getting rid of, which is old clothes. And there are lots of great secondhand stores in town, lots of churches who can use material, can use old clothes or old shoes or old coats, anything like that. But if it's past the point of reuse, then a lot of those places won't take those materials because they don't have anything to do with them. The exceptions to that are Goodwill. They'll actually take lots of materials, if wholly clothes, if you have one shoe, if you've somehow lost one of your shoes, they'll take all those materials, pretty much anything, because they have rag markets. So we talked about that yesterday, but then we also talked about getting crafty with some of those materials. So I had brought in a couple of really worn sweatshirts, and they all brought t-shirts in, and we did some weaving and knotting and made some really cute little clutches out of some old t-shirts. So that was the project we did yesterday. The picture in the bottom right corner then is actually my boss, Dave Elias, the wastewater and landfill superintendent, and my amazing intern, Jane Wilch, from last summer. We do lots of education through a program called Eco Iowa City. And if you've heard of this, and hopefully you have, this is the second round of Eco Iowa City that we've done. The first one was with the Iowa City Public Library in 2008 and 2009. And we were really fortunate at that time to get some significant grant funding. We were one of 9 cities across the country, and we got something like $60,000 to implement environmental education programs. We called it Eco Iowa City. We had a lot of events here. We had events around the community. It was lots of fun. When we started thinking about what we wanted to do for education out of the Eastside Recycling Center's Education Center, we thought, well, that was good. We got some really good feedback. We had lots of people at our events. It was effective. We had grant money to give people things like paint hardener or water bottles or tote bags to encourage them not just to think about and talk about doing these things, but to take this home with you and start doing it today. So when we started thinking about the Education Center, as I mentioned, we thought, why not recycle that program? So we're doing exactly that. And this was part of the picture there is actually Dave talking about wastewater. And that was in our water unit. We actually just kicked off our energy unit this past week, and we have, again, some events at the Eastside Recycling Center. We do have some events here. The events for this round for the energy unit are Wednesday nights. We have a film here this Wednesday night called Switch, and it should be really good. We have lots of events coming up, and I have the information over there, and it's on our website as well. We also do scheduled tours at the Eastside Recycling Center and at the landfill, and we do lots of scout and group activities, which is lots of fun. We have church groups come out. In the summer, we work with the rec center camps to have kids come out, but we do adult events as well. So those are primarily scheduled ahead of time. We do have a couple of opportunities, and the signage at the Eastside Recycling Center that I mentioned is pretty good. We've done a decent job of showing people what's going on out there. So it's not just about the plants, but it's about the wind turbine and about the pervious paving and about the building itself, which is LEED Platinum certified. So there's lots of things to do out there. You can pretty easily spend half an hour or 45 minutes wandering around just learning about the site just from the signage that's there without a formal tour. We've also been really fortunate to work with Backyard Abundance to be one of their, I think, dozen sites that are considered abundant safari sites. If you're not familiar with that, we do have some information on our website in Backyard Abundance. The folks with Backyard Abundance are very happy to talk to you about it. It's an online program, and it's to encourage people, households in Johnson County or Iowa City, to go out to these different sites that they consider abundant. And they have a whole list of them on their website, but they have, at each of these sites, there is a 4x4 in the ground with a little raised picture on it, and the kids can print off this thing from the website, and they can take it out and do a rubbing on it, and when they get all of the different sites, or so many of the different sites, they can actually send it into Backyard Abundance, and I think they're eligible to win some sort of prize. So the point is to encourage families to get out to these local areas that are abundant and to learn about them and then get rewarded for it. So it's a really neat program. We also have not specifically city, but we have lots of nonprofit board meetings at the Eastside Recycling Center. We have a couple of recurring events that happen out there. So the Salvage Barn has their board meeting there, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then we also actually rent this facility out for private events. So we've had wedding receptions. There's actually a birthday party actually there might be a wedding reception going on there now. There's something going on today. But we have lots of events out there. Again, the board meetings, we've had a graduation out there. There's seating for about 50 people out there, and it's a really neat space. Okay, I think this might be my last slide here, or getting close to it, which is great because I want to give plenty of time to talk about our really amazing partners at the Eastside Recycling Center. If you haven't been out there, I would encourage you to check it out, and not just for the city facilities, which are awesome, but there's other awesome stuff going on out there. If you haven't been out there, the Iowa Valley Habitat for Humanity is located there, and they have 2 great programs, the Restore and the Furniture Project. And then the Friends of Historic Preservation has the Salvage Barn. And you may remember the Salvage Barn being located at the Iowa City Landfill before. They moved to the Eastside Recycling Center when we completed that site in 2012. So the Eastside Recycling Center really is a pretty comprehensive recycling and reuse center. And besides the fact that we have all these entities there, we also do lots of programming out of there, as I've given you a flavor for. So if you don't know what Restore is or what Furniture Project or Salvage Barn, I didn't put their websites up here, but I encourage you to check them out. You probably know what Habitat for Humanity is. They build homes for low-income residents of Johnson County. The Iowa Valley Habitat actually covers Cedar and Iowa counties as well. We're specifically concerned about Johnson, of course, because Iowa City Landfill serves all of Johnson County. But the Restore is actually a funding mechanism in part for Habitat for Humanity. So what Restore does is they take donations of building supplies, of furniture, of lots of different stuff, and it's a little bit different niche, I would say, than a place like Goodwill or Stuff, etc. It really is more household type stuff. So they describe themselves as if Goodwill and Lowe's had a baby, you would have the Restore. So that might give you a little better feel for it. It's really pretty cool, the stuff that they get in. It's as a project person, and I should say as a person who starts projects and doesn't always finish them, it's really fun to walk into Restore and look at all the different things that they've gotten in. They have literally everything from clawfoot tubs to ceiling tiles to lamps to furniture, nails, just random stuff. It's great. And they start their pricing at about 50% of retail. So a lot of the stuff is used, not all of it is. They've also started over the past couple of years taking in appliances, and furniture was something they started taking in as well recently in conjunction with the Furniture Project. And the city used to run the Furniture Project. The Habitat for Humanity has taken that over as of 2 years ago. So if you have, there's two parts to this. If you have items that you're looking to get rid of, if you did some spring cleaning or will be doing some spring cleaning, and you're looking to get rid of furniture or gardening tools, anything like that that Restore would take, they take all that material as a tax-deductible donation, and they do pickups in Johnson County. So you can check out their website and see what they all take, and then I encourage you to go shop and check it out. That money then helps fund Habitat for Humanity homes. The Furniture Project is a little bit different. They take donations of used furniture that's in good shape, and then they work with local entities, specifically local human service agencies and churches, to get those materials back out to people in the community who may not be able to pay for them otherwise. So there is a fee for those, but the people who do use them have to have a referral through a place like the DVIP, the Domestic Violence Intervention Program, or Shelter House. So those entities can write a referral. The residents who've gotten the referral then can take it in and get up to 3 pieces of furniture. And I believe there is a small fee, but I think the highest one I've seen is something like $5. So it's really affordable, and it's really focuses on low-income individuals in our community. The Friends of Historic Preservation, again, that's a salvage barn. They do very similar things as the Restore does, but the materials that they take in, or the donations or the salvages that they do, are all 50 years or older. So this is where you would see metal ceiling tiles. This is where you would see old doors and windows, door handles that are really cool and funky, and that you can't just go somewhere and buy anymore because they don't make them anymore. So the materials, again, that they take are at least 50 years old. I wouldn't necessarily consider them antiques, but again, it's not something that you could go to Lowe's and purchase because they don't make a lot of this stuff anymore. So it's a really cool program. And the reason they're at the Eastside Recycling Center, the point of that for the city of Iowa City and the Iowa City Landfill is they may not look at what they do as specifically as waste reduction, but if these entities didn't exist, a lot of the stuff that they take in would probably end up in the landfill. So we really do look at these partners as waste reduction partners, and we're really fortunate to have them in our community. They're also really fun to work with, as we've gotten to work with them on programs over the past couple of years. So I personally feel really fortunate to be able to work with a lot of the people that work here, because it's fun and they're doing good things. And that is a shot of the Eastside Recycling Center, specifically of the Restore. The city also has an office there. I'm there 2 days a week, and Brenda is there 2 days a week. We technically have office hours, but we are both out in the community a lot. So I would encourage you, if you do want to stop in, check and see if we're there, but don't expect us to always be there. Do call ahead if you want to specifically talk about something, or call or email anytime. And then the salvage barn. And I don't have their hours up. I believe they've changed to winter hours, but you can check it out on the website, and that's on both our website and on each of their websites as well. And I will leave that up then. And I don't have our website on here. It's icgov.org/ESRC for Eastside Recycling Center, but I'm happy to take an email or a call, and I can get you to the website.